Hello, everyone. I'm Bradford,
And I'm Bradford.
and this is Spooky Time with Bradford and Bradford. Today, we're watching Midsommar, and I've got my Midsommar shirt.
He sure does.
How have you been, Bradford?
I've been pretty good. I got a nose ring. Feeling good.
Congratulations. I don't have a nose ring, but
Well,
since you do have a nose ring, that means that you're part of a special elite group, kind of like the people in Midsommar. See how I'm trying to transition?
yeah, good.
So was it painful? I already asked you this, but I want to ask for the sake of the audience. Was it painful to get the septum ring?
I mean, for like 2 seconds, sure.
Okay.
It was a little sore.
That's not bad.
Afterwards.
Okay, here's another transition. Was Midsommar painful for you?
Not really. I enjoyed the watch.
Okay, cool.
It was painful for the people in it.
What?
It was painful for the people in it.
It was painful for the characters. Do you want to tell us a little bit, like give us a rundown of the plot?
Yeah, so it starts off very tragic, and the main character loses her sister and her parents to like murder-suicide right away. And then she basically decides to go on a trip that she wasn't really welcome to going on with her boyfriend and his friends. And they go to Sweden?
Sweden, yeah.
They go to Sweden and like meet up with these people. They take drugs like after they get out of the car. Yeah, so they're experiencing customs, and then an old couple is like having basically their last supper, and they're like, the vibes are off for this supper for some reason. And then they're like, all right. And everybody's watching, and they jump off a cliff, and then the old guy does a bad choice and just falls feet first, which breaks his legs. And then everybody's like moaning for him, and then they take out the good hammer and they smash it. So that's kind of their first culture shock. Yeah, and basically crazier and crazier things happen. Chidi dies, and then other people die, and and basically it gets higher and higher stakes. She's the main character. Danny is crowned Spring Queen.
The May Queen.
May Queen. She's dressed up in flowers, and then more bad things happen, and her boyfriend cheats on her in a weird way, and she's like, all right, then you burn in a fire. And that's how it ends. All
right, that's a good rundown. I'm going to try to do a cartoon version of what you just said, because that would be pretty fun. Take a little too much time, but you know.
Oh, I know.
He's going to help me. Yay. So that's a great rundown. And we haven't even touched upon themes, that word theme there. Because I think if we did, it would warrant a much longer video than I want us to make right now. But I will say this: the themes
get a couple words.
Well, I want to say that the themes get, I think, wonderfully complex, and this is where it gets into something that is not so much of a horror movie. I did read. I prepped a little bit for our conversation. I did read an interview with the director, Ari Aster, and he said that for Christian and his friends, they're the ones in a horror movie. But for Danny, the female protagonist, she's in a different movie, right? That she's finding this community.
Yeah.
It's a strange community, but she's finding this community that she needs right now to heal in her own way. So that's an interesting way of looking at the film, that there's sort of two genres going on, and you could easily turn it into just kind of a very strange, fascinating philosophical drama if you took the murder out of it. I suppose you could say that about almost any horror movie, but because Danny's experience is more about tragedy and loss and wanting love and wanting growth and wanting loyalty from her boyfriend. So all of those things are going on, and there's there's never really a moment until possibly at the end where she realizes like, oh, well, we're in a horrible situation. And even then, I think that she's so drugged up that she might not understand exactly what's going on. Anyway, so what score do you want to give plot and themes?
I'm probably gonna just up my score for originality. I really like one word I would describe like very very broadly for the themes is grief, and I think that's always an interesting one to play with in horror. Yeah, I would say I'd give plot and themes a solid 8.
Solid 8. Okay, that's a good nice. Oh, by the way, if you're just watching this for the first time, we give the plot and themes and the other components a score of 1 through 10, 1 being completely awful and 10 being awesome. After watching it twice, each time I think about it, I contemplate it, it's on my mind. And so even though some of the plot is kind of simplistic and is just following in the footsteps of traditional horror, the themes I think are complex enough that I'm giving it a 9. So because the themes are worth thinking about and worth analyzing, I'm probably also influenced because right when I saw this movie, a student of mine wrote a really cool essay, and it's like I liked the way she did it. All right, well, we're going to move on to acting and characterization. I'll go first for this one. So I love the performance of the actress who played Danny, and it's Florence Pugh, I think. She was in Little Women, and so I think because of Midsommar that this is kind of a great breakout role for her. So I thought her acting was incredible. I thought all of the guys were intentionally stereotypical. All right, so there's the character of Mark is very stereotypical he's just very much a frat kind of guy who just he's interested in the ladies and getting drunk or high, or he's really just seeking pleasure. He's very much a fool character. And then the character of, we're calling him Cheaty, but apparently I just looked it up and his real character name is Josh. And he's kind of the brainiac, the intellectual guy. And then there's Christian. I guess Christian is kind of more interesting than your typical movie with frat boy characters.
Yeah, this really does follow the Cabin in the Woods.
Yes, yeah, you've got all of the Cabin in the Woods kind of, the archetypes are in there. But let me ask you this. So what do you think now? I think the whole universe who's seen this movie agrees that Christian is a douchebag. I haven't met anybody that says like, wow, I really like that Christian guy. So he's a dork. But did you think that he's like, well, is he a well-developed dork? Or is he just a stereotype?
I would say somewhere in between, because there's obviously not a lot of time to characterize it's not that many people to characterize, but it mainly focuses on Danny, which is a choice, but also, there's 3 characters kind of left that are a little less deep than her, and I think that's on purpose, but it does make them easier to watch get killed.
Yeah. I think that basically they've characterized Christian in a way so that by the time he's put into a bear and set on fire, we're like, I feel okay with this. It's like the director is trying to get us on the side of the Midsommar, the Harga people. I like Danny's performance. I thought the other characters were flat, pretty good performances. Because of the strength of Danny's performance and also just the characterization of the community, I will give it a 7.5.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Danny's acting and characterization is like a league above the other main/side characters, but I do think that was purposeful in creating like Danny's, like very much focusing on Danny's perspective and her story. So I think I'm going to give it another 8.
All right, another 8. All right, we're going to move on to style and tone. So this is the visual feel, the look of things like sets, the mood that it creates, this the setting that's established in this spooky movie. So I'll let you talk first.
Style and tone. I waited a long time to watch this movie because it was not Netflix. But when I saw the trailers come out, I was really intrigued by this bright, beautiful, flowery horror movie. And that was the first thing that drew me to it. So that's like definitely big points. I am probably going to knock off points for like not a lot of tension building. Like I think there's mystery built, but I don't think there's a lot of tension just because it's Dani's story and she's obviously gonna accept it in the end. Yeah, that was probably the big downfall for me.
Okay, and I agree with all those things, and I did really like the look of having this very sunshiny, bright world. That even though terrible things are going to befall the young men in this movie, and basically the young female protagonist, depending on how you look at it, I guess. So it was good. So what score would you give style and tone?
I'm gonna just subtract 1 point for the lack of like basically spookiness throughout. Even though that comes later. The lack of built up tension.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I would give it a 9, I think. I really like the world building.
Yeah, it's built very well. So I'm also going to give it a 9 because I thought it was very, this was a very different look to, the classical horror film. Yeah. So there we go. It's scoring pretty high. Okay, so visual effects and sound effects. So sound effects might be, the cool sound effects that a monster makes or something like that, but it can also be the music or the ambiance. And visual effects, of course, not every horror movie is going to have visual effects, but if it has gore, makeup effects, monster effects, anything like that. So what do you think of visual effects and sound effects?
This is probably where it's going to score lower for me because for one thing, I really liked how it was shot. Like there was no sort of ambiguity when you saw gore, which is a shock factor that I really like to see in horror movies. However, the actual visual effects itself always looked like an aged wound when it never was. Like when the people fall off, it's very. I think the colors are what's off for me. I'm just critiquing these professional makeup artists while I know nothing about them. But those are my preferences for gore.
So there's two things that come to my mind. There's the cliff jumping scene where we see the splat and we see like the poor lady's face bounce off the rock and the guy with his broken legs, and then he gets hammered. So those were all really gross. I don't know how like if I can fairly judge this, Nick, because you like gore in horror movies, and I'm more of a prude. Like, oh well, I didn't need that.
And I'm like, where's all the blood?
Yeah. So
gore serves different purposes for each movie, and I think for this movie, it kind of ups the horror genre anyways in the movie, just to like. But also, I think it's a nice example of like stark, horrible grief. Like the imagery with like the sister and the parents, and like I think it ties nicely to the theme.
So I'm going to give visual effects and sound effects. I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it an 8 because that poor monstrosity that's created in that hen house is worth at least an 8.
Nice. I'm going to give it a 7 just because I think all of the makeup had a strange look to me because of the coloring.
All right. Well, now we're at spookiness. So, spookiness is about how scared you are while you're watching the movie, but it could also be, did you have trouble sleeping that night? Did you, spend the next week just looking under the bed for monsters and stuff like that? So, let's see. So I'll go first with spookiness. Okay, so like I said, I'm fascinated. I gave this score like a very high score to the themes because I think that this is a fascinating movie, and there's some disturbing qualities, but I'm not scared during this movie. I don't even know that the filmmaker wants me to be scared. I think the filmmaker wants to intrigue me in kind of the same way that Danny is intrigued by this. You know, like to me, the strongest parts of the movie are seeing the characters get not drawn into their deaths, but drawn into these strange situations. So when Christian is drawn in, like is seduced by not just one woman, but like the whole community of like, you know, like all the women that are surrounding him while he's procreating, you know, with the person in the village. That's bizarre, but it's this weird culture that I'm fascinated by. Like the best scene in the movie for me is when Danny discovers her boyfriend's cheating on her with this weird commune. And then when she starts crying and the other May Queens, the other women in the community, they have this moment of this exercise of empathy. Yeah. So all of those to me are the most fascinating, compelling parts of the movie that, you know, I recommend the movie to people to just see what you think. It's not everybody's cup of tea. But as far as spookiness goes, I don't know that I was ever that scared. I was always intrigued. I was rooting for Danny. You know, I didn't want Danny to die. So that was, you know, so there was levels of tension, but it wasn't all that spooky.
Yeah, I think I mostly have the same things to say. I was really intrigued by the society. It never really had a sinister tone to me, though. Mm-hmm. All of the parts that stuck out to me were parts that I liked and like felt happy about. Like there's this part where she's dancing and she starts to speak Swedish or gibberish to the other person because they're like drugged up or something. And the moment of like sharing grief, I thought was like kind of beautiful. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't like the things that I thought about after the fact were mostly the nice things that I liked about the society.
I guess I'll go first for spookiness. So I'm scoring it kind of low for spookiness then. I think I'm going to give it just a 5. I'll get it a 5.5.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 5.
Those are the scores.
Those are the scores.
We're going to do the math now. Bump, 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 bump. Math. Oops, I screwed up the math already. All right, so according to the score, it gets 76%, which I thought it was at least on track for, you know, a B or B plus. But I think the spookiness score, you know, you gotta have scary spookiness if it's a scary movie, and I don't think it did.
Because keep in mind, this isn't a quality grade. This is a horror movie. It's
right. We're looking for the scariest movie. We're looking for a scary movie, right?
I feel like every time we end up with a final score, we're like, don't give it.
Like, hey, we don't hate on us. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like the but you know what? I'm glad we watched and talked about Midsommar because we've been talking about. I keep mentioning it. So it's definitely a movie that stays on your mind, but you know, so does Saving Private Ryan and things like that. But I would, you know, so it's there's disturbing qualities to it, but is it that spooky? I guess it's not that spooky for us, but it's a fascinating film to watch.
Yeah.
So, what are we going to watch for our next spooky time?
I found that's also how I found out about Shudder, but I was looking at this movie called Blood Quantum, and I don't want you to look it up because it's
okay.
It kind of has an interesting plot and
Blood Quantum
perspective.
All right, so that's on Shudder.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I will.
Your birthday's coming up, so you might get a subscription.
It is a zombie movie.
Oh, you just told me not to find out anything about it.
But that's all you're going to find out because there's more interesting things that go on.
All right, folks, that's it for Spooky Time with Bradford and Bradford. I'm Bradford.
And I'm Bradford.
And we'll scare you next week.